Nina and the Rewind Socks. Nina loved weird things. Mismatched buttons, squeaky toys, even glittery shoelaces with one end frayed. So when she and her gran visited the secondhand shop on Maple Street, she went straight to her favorite section, the everything fifth tip bin. She dug through old gloves, a hat shaped like a frog, and 3 jigsaw puzzle pieces that didn't belong together then. Her fingers brushed something soft and fuzzy. Socks, bright yellow socks. They were thick, cozy looking, and covered in tiny embroidered lightning bolts. Nina held them up and grinned. Definitely weird. She turned them over and spotted a little white tag stitched inside the cuff of one. Warning! Only works if worn as a pair, Nina snorted. Okay, that's dramatic for socks. She looked around the shop. The owner was snoring behind the counter, and Gran was still chatting with the lady from the jam stall next door. Nina shrugged, dropped a coin into the tin marked "Pay Here," and stuffed the socks into her backpack. The next morning, she slipped them on before school, just for fun. They felt amazing, like tiny foot hugs. She even ran up the stairs without tripping, which was unusual. Then again, maybe she was just finally getting better at stairs. At school, nobody noticed the socks. They were hidden under her trousers after all. But Nina kept wiggling her toes in them and smiling. Something about the socks felt zappy, like they were holding a secret. She didn't know it yet, but those fuzzy yellow socks were about to turn her ordinary school day into something extra with lightning bolts, giggles, and a few very well-timed do-overs. And all because she wore both. It was art day at school, Nina's absolute favorite. She had spent all morning drawing a giant fire-breathing hedgehog wearing a crown. It was glorious, spiky, shiny, and very, very purple. During break, she asked her teacher if she could keep working on it. With a nod and a smile, she grabbed her lunchbox and her juice, tiptoed back to her desk, and proudly sat beside her royal hedgehog. She opened the juice box, reached for her paintbrush, and her elbow bumped the box. Sploosh! A wave of orange juice splattered across the paper like a fizzy orange disaster. Nina stared in horror. Oh, no, I now! Her hedgehog's crown was melting. Its fire breath had turned into a sticky orange puddle. Her perfect masterpiece, ruined. She dropped her head to the table and groaned. But then something strange. Her socks got warm, not just warmtingly. She looked down. They were glowing. Not a lot, just a soft yellow shimmer. And then poof. The room blinked. Everything shifted. Nina gasped. She was still at her desk. The juice box was still full. Her drawing? Dry. Safe. Glorious. And her arm? Just about to knock the juice over. She yanked it back and stared in disbelief. I went back in time? She looked down at her socks. Did you do that? They didn't answer, obviously. But they wiggled ever so slightly. Nina blinked, touched her painting, then looked around. The same chatter, the same clock. But 30 seconds earlier, she sat very still, heart thumping. She'd just rewound time. Only a little. But it worked. She whispered to herself, okay, these socks are magic. And her smile stretched wider than the hedgehog's crown. Nina couldn't stop thinking about it. The socks had rewound time. Not a dream, not a fluke. Real life fizzy foot magic. And if they did it once, could they do it again? The next day, during a maths quiz, she wrote the wrong answer on question 4. She stared at it in panic. Ugh, it's 28, not 38. She wiggled her toes inside the socks and whispered, please? Poof. The air shimmered. 30 seconds earlier, her pencil was still hovering over the question. She erased the mistake and wrote 28 instead. Nina grinned. Oh, this is good. At recess, she dropped the class football during a pass. Normally, it would roll into the mud, but poof, back she went. This time, she caught it like a superstar. Everyone cheered. Nice one, Nina. She casually adjusted her sock cuffs like a champion. Later that day, she was skipping down the hallway and spotted a sticky wad of gum just in time. She could have stepped right into it. She looked down. Rewind? Pooh. Back 30 seconds. She hopped to the side. No gum, no mess. By now, Nina was starting to get the hang of it. She kept both socks pulled up tight and checked them constantly, because one thing was clear, the magic only worked when she wore both. Lose one and it might all disappear. She started calling them her rewind rockets and walked with an extra spring in her step. The world suddenly felt full of second-chance destiny moments she could fix, dodge, or replay with just a shimmer and a wish. And Nina was loving every second of it. At first, Nina used her rewind socks for real thing spills, mistakes, quiz answers. But soon, the little rewind started creeping into everything. It began with a sneeze. She was lining up for assembly when one snuck up on her. Achoo! Loud. Unexpected. Right in front of the school captain. Nina's face went red. Nope. Poof. Back 30 seconds. This time she held it in until she could sneeze behind her elbow. Crisis avoided. Later, she accidentally burped during story time. Not a huge one, but it echoed. Kids turned and snickered. Poof! Rewind. She sipped her water a little slower. Problem solved. Then came the wave. Her crushwell kind of waved at her across the playground. Nina panicked and did a strange elbow flap salute thing in return. Huh? What was that? She muttered, horrified. Poof, poof, poof. She tried again. A smaller wave, a finger wriggle, a smile with a nod. Each time, she rewound and redid it. After the 5th try, she forgot which version was the real one. Wait, did he already wave? Did I already wave back? Am I waving too much? She stood frozen in the middle of the playground, blinking like a confused robot. Things were getting silly and kind of exhausting. By lunchtime, Nina had rewound about a dozen times. Her brain felt foggy. Her socks felt warm and a little squishy. Even magic socks, it seemed, had limits. She flopped onto the bench and stared at her feet. Okay, she whispered. Maybe I need to chill. Because sometimes, being perfect wasn't worth rewinding the entire day for. The big day had arrived, the school talent show. Nina was ready. She'd practiced her magic act for a whole week. Card tricks, disappearing coin, the guess your number routine, it was gonna be amazing. She wore her favorite sparkly cape, packed her props in a shoebox, and of course pulled on her trusty rewind socks. Just in case. Backstage, her name was called... Next up, Nina with a little magic. Applause. A few whoops. Her classmates cheered. She stepped onto the stage, heart thumping, hands slightly sweaty. She smiled wide and reached into the shoebox for her coin trick. Plink. The coin slipped from her fingers, bounced once and rolled straight off the stage. Gasps. She froze. Her whole act started with that coin. Panicking, she looked down at her socks and whispered, "Please, rewind." But nothing. No glow, no shimmer, no poof. She wiggled her toes. Still nothing. Her heart sank. Then she saw Itone's sock was gone. Just her right foot had the yellow lightning bolt sock. The left foot was bare. Her eyes widened. Where's my other sock? Backstage? Her bag? Stuck in her shoe? Too late. She was standing there, in front of 100 people. No magic, no sock magic, no way out. And for the first time in days, she was stuck in real time. Nina took a deep breath. Her cheeks burned. Her fingers shook. But then she remembered something. She'd been practicing without rewinds all week. She knew the act. Even without the coin, she could still do something. It wouldn't be perfect, but it could still be hers. Nina stood frozen on stage, her sparkly cape suddenly feeling much too big. No coin, no second sock, no magic, just her. The silence in the room stretched. A few kids whispered. A teacher cleared their throat. Nina could feel the familiar bubble of panic rising in her chest. Normally, this was the part she'd rewind and fix, but not today. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered to herself, "Okay, Nina, you've got this. No rewinds, just real time." And then she smiled. She raised her empty hands and announced, "For my first trick, I'm going to pull absolutely nothing out of my pocket." A few giggles. She flipped her pockets inside out with dramatic flair, gasped, and said, "It's vanished. Even I can't find it." Laughter. Then she moved on. She grabbed a marker and a whiteboard and turned her number trick into a guessing game with the audience. Instead of cards, she used random classroom supplies erasers, rulers, even a snack wrapper to build a silly story about a banana detective solving pencil crimes. By the time she took her final bow, the audience was howling with laughter. She hadn't done her planned act. She hadn't needed the socks. But she'd improvised. She'd made it fun. She'd been herself, and it worked. As she walked off stage, her cheeks glowing and her knees still shaking, she heard clapping, cheersoned, someone yell, "Nina for class magician!" She laughed and whispered to herself, "Guess the socks weren't the only magic I had." In that moment, Nina learned something powerful. Sometimes, no do-over is exactly what you need to discover what you're really capable of. After the talent show, Nina sat behind the curtain, catching her breath and holding her shoebox of props. Her heart was still racing, but for the first time that day, it was racing for a good reason. She'd done it. No socks, no rewinds, just hair and it had worked. As she untied her shoes backstage, something yellow peeked out from underneath the bench. She leaned down and tugged. Her missing sock. "Seriously?" she whispered, holding it up like it was a cheeky goblin. "You've been hiding here the whole time?" The sock, of course, said nothing, but it looked a little extra fuzzy. A little proud. She smiled and slipped it back on. But the truth was, she didn't need it anymore. Not in the same way. That night at home, Nina pulled the socks off and folded them gently. She placed them in a little box and tucked it into her drawer, right between her collection of glitter pens and a seashell shaped like a cat. She looked at the socks and said, "Thanks for the rewinds, but I think I'm okay now." From then on, she didn't reach for them when she made small mistakes. She let the juice spill, she let the gum get close, she even let the weird waves happen. And each time, she just laughed. Sure, it was fun having do-overs, but it was braver learning to face things head-on, and more importantly, it was real. Moral lesson. Sometimes what makes a moment special isn't getting it perfect, it's doing it your way, even when it's messy. Sweet things are sweeter when shared, and real courage doesn't come from rewinding, it comes from moving forward. Follow for more magical moments. Subscribe for more socks with secret powers.